morning. I'm Jane Pauley, and this is a special edition of Sunday Morning. We're calling it Mind Matters, a look into the many mysteries of human thought and creativity. And the very first mystery we'll explore is the origin of genius. Just what's behind those eureka and light bulb moments that separate a true genius from the rest of us. A stroke of genius is the subject Mo Rocca will tackle in our cover story.
It's not easy to define.
You gotta be creative and imaginative and think out of the box.
And yet, unmistakable when you're in its presence.
I'm an engineer. I like to make things work.
I've always been a person who is very determined.
And you're the vessel.
Yeah, I believe that it comes to you.
Ahead this Sunday morning, in search of genius.
Changing minds about mental illness and ending its stigma is the mission of actress Glenn Close, as Tracy Smith will be telling us.
15 years ago, Jessie Close confided in her sister Glenn that she wanted to die.
How close do you think you were to losing her?
Very close. I never knew how close. Many people who live with bipolar disorder have deaths by suicide.
Change a mind about mental illness, and you can change a life.
Glenn Close's campaign to rethink mental illness, later on Sunday Morning.
A question for all our human minds to ponder. Could it be that animals are smarter than us? Martha Teichner was more than happy to look into that.
Hi, Donna. Certain stories are more fun than others.
Is that good?
What's not to like about a polite conversation with Donna the elephant?
Good girl.
Or getting up close and personal with talkative dolphins. Ahead this Sunday morning, the pleasures of exploring the animal mind.
Savants are people with remarkable mental powers that defy explanation. With Susan Spencer this morning, we'll meet a few.
Alonzo Clemens is a savant. He can't read or write or speak very clearly.
What are you going to make?
Horse.
But watch this.
But you have never had an art lesson?
Never.
Never.
Savants.
12/19/26, February 2, 9/16,
Ahead on Sunday morning.
March 1/8/15/22.
Rita Braver asks if there's a link between art and madness. Erin Moriarty has questions about the so-called sixth sense. Faith Saley looks at the latest research into psychedelic drugs and altered states. Tony DeCopel explores the connection between mind and hand, and more. To begin, the headlines for this Sunday morning, March 18th, 2018. There's sharp reaction to the firing of former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe for allegedly leaking information to reporters and misleading investigators. President Trump tweeted McCabe was, quote, caught, called out, and fired. He called it a great day for democracy. That prompted this rebuke from former CIA Director John Brennan. He called Mr. Trump, quote, a disgraced demagogue headed for the dustbin of history. For his part, McCabe calls his firing part of the administration's war on the FBI and the Mueller investigation. A whistleblower tells the New York Times that a data mining firm, Cambridge Analytica, gathered private information from the Facebook profiles of more than 50 million Americans without their permission and used it to assist the Trump campaign. In Russia today, President Vladimir Putin cast his ballot in Moscow in an election with a foregone conclusion, his re-election. It would be his fourth term. Tens of thousands, the Irish and the Irish for a Day, celebrated St. Patrick's Day Saturday. New Yorkers marched along Fifth Avenue in the city's 257th St. Patrick's Day Parade. At the NCAA tournament last night, Michigan needed a buzzer beater to top Houston and take it into the Sweet 16. More games on CBS Sports later today. Now the weather. Cold and windy across the west today with snow falling from Montana to Arizona. Strong thunderstorms are possible in the south, but nice for now in the northeast. As for the week ahead, well, spring arrives Tuesday.
Ahead, how to account for genius.
How to account for a stroke of genius? How is it that light bulb-like flashes of inspiration seem to have touched only a handful of people down through the centuries? Our cover story is reported by Mo Rocca.
Albert Einstein, Madame Curie, theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, who passed away last week.
All my life, I have sought to understand the universe.
We know they're all geniuses, but what does that mean?
For me, genius is not just a question of intellectual capacity. It's the ability to do and think beyond the borders of most of the rest of us.
And back in the 1970s, Vint Cerf, now at Google, and his colleague Bob Kahn did just that when they helped create the Internet, ingeniously interconnecting existing networks and, this is crucial, welcoming users to build more.
I wanted everybody in the world to have access to this.
This earth-shaking innovation touches just about everything we do today.
I'm not the visionary that I think geniuses represent. I'm an engineer. I like to make things work.
Part of genius is having a type of vision that then spurs others to do great things. It's hard.
Which is why, says author Walter Isaacson,
a lot of my
Vint Cerf is a genius.
If I pull out my phone and you see everything from Uber apps to Airbnb, it's all because that was enabled by a common set of protocols that said anybody can create.
Genius is a word that gets tossed around a lot these days. Has it suffered from word inflation?
Absolutely. We slap the word genius on people who are just really smart, but we all know that smart people are a dime a dozen. Being a genius means you gotta be creative and imaginative. Steve Jobs would say, think different.
Isaacson's written biographies of such geniuses as Da Vinci, Einstein, Ben Franklin, and the late co-founder of Apple.
You spent a lot of time with Steve Jobs. Did you feel like you were in the presence of a genius?
I felt I was in the presence of somebody who could connect art to technology. And that gave him an ability to understand how beauty matters.
A key component of genius, according to Isaacson, uncontainable curiosity.
You're a sixth grader growing up in Hawaii, and you see a plant. What happens?
I see a plant and I wonder to myself, how did that plant land on this remote island in the middle of the Pacific?
Jennifer Doudna grew up to become a biochemist at the University of California at Berkeley. We spoke via cell phone.
Obviously, you were a very curious kid.
Well, that could be interpreted in different ways, but, but yes.
Doudna co-discovered a technique for editing genes known as CRISPR.
I think CRISPR is best described as a surgical tool for changing the code of life.
With CRISPR, terrible diseases might one day be eradicated.
Walter Isaacson says you're a genius. How does that feel?
I don't think of myself that way at all. I love building teams and putting groups together that I think collectively do work that's better than any of us would do individually. And I really enjoy the process of discovery.
Collaboration and discovery. Dynamics clearly at play with Wynton Marsalis and his orchestra.
What does that feel like when it's working?
Feels unbelievably great. If you can get into that moment of improvising, they all can hear it. You have to make yourself stop playing because it feels so good you don't want to stop.
The The co-founder of Jazz at Lincoln Center is the first artist to win Grammys for both classical and jazz. Marsalis says he doesn't know where his talent comes from.
It's a spiritual thing that we don't know. Nobody can explain a person like Bach or Shakespeare or Duke Ellington. You don't know why.
Do you think it's visited on you?
I think it's something you interpret that passes through you, like an understanding. Because you could get into a state and you don't even remember what it was. It just comes to you.
An inspired state, says Walter Isaacson, that geniuses of all disciplines understand.
Einstein would say that he was very much of an artist. When he had trouble figuring out the field equations that went into general relativity, he'd pull out his violin and play Mozart, saying that Mozart helped him connect with the harmonies of the spheres. And so, yes, you have to understand the beauty of math, and for that matter, the mathematics of beauty.
Marsalis recalls talking with world-famous architect Frank Gehry about Gehry's design work.
And we're talking about form, logic, a certain type of lyricism, how you combine and integrate different things to come up with an innovative idea.
In a situation like that, both of you are talking about both architecture and music.
They're the same thing.
And if you're wondering if you're living with a future genius, another Marsalis, Cerf, or Doudna, here's some advice.
I think if you've got a genius or a creative kid, you never want to knock out the curiosity and the sense of observation and that sense of wonder about why the sky is blue.
If anyone in our own time deserved the title of genius, it was Stephen Hawking, the theoretical physicist who died this past Wednesday at the age of 76. Hawking transformed our notion of space and time and the nature of black holes, and did it all while confined to a wheelchair and deprived of speech. Born in the English university town of Oxford in 1942, and a less than stellar student at first, Hawking was just 21 when he was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and told he had just a few years to live. Undaunted, he defied his prognosis by decades, pursuing his research at Cambridge while communicating through computerized speech, astonishing even himself, as he once told 60 Minutes.
For me, it is quite an achievement. I never thought I would get so far.
Hawking became a celebrity in 1988 with the publication of his A Brief History of Time, one of the best-selling books about science of all time.
Stephen Hawking.
His public honors were almost beyond counting. He received a Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama.
Professor Stephen Hawking was a brilliant man and a mediocre student.
Hawking was portrayed by Eddie Redmayne in the 2014 film, The Theory of Everything.
First, a star vanishes into a black hole.
And he even made cameo appearances on The Simpsons.
I wanted to see your utopia, but now I see it as more of a fruitopia.
Whatever the explanation, the mind of Stephen Hawking saw more, and saw more deeply than the minds of all the rest of us. A genius indeed.